There are three things that are the most important. I call it the three I's. We weren't meant to wake up to jarring alarms. I will say that there are not a lot of women in this portion.
So what is it, in your opinion, the importance of somebody hiring a professional company like Bravas?
Nobody wants to pull a chain or crank, and especially now that we're going toward cordless.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Design Discussions with Nadine. I am Nadine, and today I have a very special guest, Krystal Finch with Bravas, and she is a home experience designer there. And so we're going to talk all about what your company does and the importance of hiring a professional company like yours to do all that they need to do in their home. But first I want to talk about how we met.
Yes.
So I had been following you on Instagram and then just happened to notice that you had posted some of your contact information on there, and I happened to see, oh, that area code looks familiar, and zoomed in, reached out, and we're fellow Clevelanders. So grew up in not too far away from each other, actually. So I love that. So thank you for joining me here.
Yes,
it's going to be a pleasure to talk about everything and talk a little bit about Cleveland and as Cleveland girls do.
I know. I can't tell you enough how exciting it is to meet someone else from Cleveland. There actually are quite a few of us down here in Texas, but the interesting part about that was that I was very hesitant about putting my personal cell phone number in my email signature. And as we're going through a rebrand, I was excited because it had colors and all of that. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to put it on there. You know, I can set boundaries with clients if I need to about calling all hours of the night. And it was probably maybe 5 minutes after that you reached out, and I was like, this is great. I was like, I'm never changing my phone number, first of all.
Exactly. And see, because you never know who might see that and then be like, look, I made a connection. I'm like, I have to message this girl and find out all about you and how you ended up here and all that stuff. So, and of course, as I mentioned before, your parents are, big into sports, and you talked about that and how they're huge Browns fans.
Yes, Browns, Guardians, Cavs, all of it.
As my people tend to get a little upset and disappointed by the fact that I'm more of a Texan girl now and follow those sports since I've been here for 20 years. So I do get some pushback on that from my people up there.
I think the biggest thing that I have to remind everyone back home is that there's room for all of it. And, my children were born here, so I give them the choice, as much as I'd prefer that they root for Cleveland teams. If they play each other, if they want to root for the Texans,
it's totally fine.
I have to grin and bear it.
Yeah. And then it's so funny because your last name is Finch.
Yes.
And here we have my new co-host, Lily.
Yes.
And so it's her first episode here joining us. So it's very coincidental that, your last name is Finch, and here we have our little bird.
Well, birds of a feather.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm so happy to have her here.
So let's see how she cooperates and, dancing and all the things. Getting excited too about having you here. So let's now start talking about the reason why you're here.
Yes.
And I want to talk about Bravas and what you guys do. You've been in the industry for 5 years with them.
Yes.
So let's talk about how you got into it. You mentioned, you didn't find it, it found you.
Correct.
So how did that happen?
So my background comes from retail. Since I was very young, I was always in retail, kind of worked my way up into the corporate setting of that, always in the luxury space. And, I hit a crossroad and was kind of like, is this what I want to continue to do? And I took a chance and left the retail industry, fell flat on my face a couple of times trying other things. And I happened to have lunch with a friend of mine that was also new to the industry. And she's like, you really ought to try it out. And I was like, I don't know anything about building a home. I don't know anything about what it is that you even do. But I said, why not? So I went in and I met with the team, and they decided to take a chance on me. I fell in love with it. I thought everything about home automation and the home experience was really, really cool. So I said, okay. At first I was like, I'll just try this out and see if it works. And I've been hooked ever since.
Yeah, and I think that type of industry wasn't as big of a thing, 10 years ago or so. But I think a lot more people are incorporating these automations into their home. And I think in the past, a lot of homeowners would try to do these things on their own.
Yes.
But now there's companies like Bravas that can do the whole shebang, right?
Absolutely.
So what is it, in your opinion, the importance of somebody hiring a professional company like Bravas as opposed to trying to do it on their own?
Yeah, so like you said, there are a lot of levels to this. It's kind of a niche, right? So there's a lot of levels to what we do and who does them. You have businesses that have a few guys working, and that's wonderful. You have your DIY products. You have your big box stores where you can get all of these things from and buy them yourself. We have our favorite 2-day shipper that we love that has their own kind of plug and play products. But when you hire someone like Bravas, there's a reason why we call it home experience design. This goes way beyond your, the custom integration that everybody knows or has grown to know in the last few years. But the biggest difference between what we do and what they do is that we don't focus on the product itself. We don't focus on, it's not just about hanging TVs and putting in speakers and doing all of those things. It's more about how does the homeowner want to live in their space. This is one of the biggest investments they'll ever make. This is the place that you go to wind down, and you want it to feel like a big hug. You want it to feel comfortable. And so when I speak with my clients, my designers, my architects, and my builders, it's not about the product. To start, of course we get there, but it's not about the product. It really comes down to, how do you want to experience your home? And aside from that, from a service perspective, right? Do you have the right people in place and the right team in place? It's technology.
Yeah.
It's not always going to be perfect, as much as we would love for it to be.
Right.
It's not always going to be perfect, but you want to know that you have a company that stands behind you through the life of the home, through the growth of the home, through the evolution of the home, as more children come into the home, things like that.
And I think that's a misconception too for a lot of people. Like you mentioned, it's not hanging TVs and speakers.
Right.
I'm gonna give my co-host a little snack.
She deserves it.
Yeah. That it's not just that. There's a lot more involved and a lot more things people can incorporate into their home with this that they could never do before, or even if they could, they didn't know about it.
Absolutely. And, when I first started in the industry, I was in more of a production side of things. I worked with a lot of volume builders, some great volume builders, where the offerings were extremely limited. And I didn't realize that at the time because I was new. And I was like, here is the menu. Here are the things that I can offer you. Here are the things that you can add on if you'd like. And I kind of felt like that's it. But I had the opportunity to step out a little bit and learn a little bit more. And when I realized that there was this whole world of an experience that people can have in their homes, and I was like, oh my gosh, like this is really, really cool. So that's what led me into the more custom side of things, to be able to kind of take some wild ideas and be able to execute them.
Let's give a little rundown on what are your favorite things that you put into people's homes. I'm curious about that.
Yes, so probably my number one favorite thing are gonna be the motorized window treatments, whether it's indoor or outdoor. We can enclose the patio with motorized shades. We can do motorized window treatments on the inside of the house, whether it's roller shades, motorized drapery. So there's just it's just fun to push a button and something just happens, right? It's a great conversation piece, but I also like to be very practical about it as well. A lot of the homes are getting taller and the windows are getting bigger. Nobody wants to pull a chain or crank, and especially now that we're going toward cordless, it's a lot easier to be able to, close those shades.
Not only that, those chains, break. They could pop off.
Yes, and they're a hazard. They're a safety hazard. Yeah. But aside from shading, my favorite thing right now are invisible speakers.
Oh, yep.
I cannot get enough of an invisible speaker.
I know, and a lot of people look at that and they go, what in the world is that? Like, how do you have an invisible speaker? When you explain to somebody how it functions, it's kind of like they're surprised, like, how does that even work?
Yes.
Right?
Yes. And I've had the opportunity to go to an experience center for one of our products that we use, and they show you how it all goes in, and it's just the coolest thing. And honestly, to my specifiers, if you ever want to go out to California and take a look at what that experience center looks like, I'd be happy to take you, because you don't believe it until you see it truly.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So the first time I ever heard about those invisible speakers was I was visiting an interior designer friend in Paris, Deborah Hess, and she told me about those and how she's put them in, many homes and apartments in Paris, and it was amazing to hear about that.
It really is.
Yeah.
I think when it comes to what we do at Bravas as home experience designers, there are three things that are the most important. I call it the 3 I's. We want to be intentional, we want to be impactful, and if I have anything to do with it, I want it to be invisible. So if there's ever an opportunity, and this goes for lighting as well, we do very, very curated and custom lighting design in-house. So as much as we can make invisible, nobody wants to go into your home and see a polka dotted ceiling full of lights and speakers and all of the things. Same thing on your walls, especially if you have art on the wall, or you have your art on the wall, you don't necessarily want to see it flanked with 2 speakers.
Right.
So there's so many ways that we can achieve all of the technology without you having to see it.
And then there was a mention of the earlier the better, right? To bring you
Yes.
guys in when it comes to, like, if an interior designer or a builder or an architect wants to use you guys. What is the importance of that?
The importance of it is, again, if we want everything to be as invisible as possible, the best case scenario is to get us, when you're hiring your architects and your designers and your builders, hire us as well, because then we can all work together. I never want to step on the toes of the builder or the designer or the architect. So it's best for us to work as a team. It's very, very difficult if you bring us in midway through the build and then you tell me you want your shades to be hidden. If I can work with the architect ahead of time, we can factor in shade pockets in the drawings so that your shades truly go up into the ceiling and you do not see them at all. Some people don't mind if there's a roller in the window. That's totally fine too. There's beautiful ways to achieve that as well. Because we do retrofits all the time, remodels, all of those. But if we can hide it, why not? If we can put an invisible speaker behind the sheetrock, and you truly, there's a difference between a flush, and there's a difference between invisible, but if we can put it behind this beautiful masonry that you have, why not?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna give her one more. Because I see she's walking around, like, looking, like, I know there's something over there. Like, give me that, give me that.
Yes.
Okay. So that comes back to the planning,
Yes.
right? It takes lots of planning to do this, and of course, anybody can bring you in at any time, but it's optimal straight from the beginning.
Yes, and I think that that's where we saw an opportunity 5 years ago when Bravas came together, is that we can work, we want to maintain the integrity of the design vision, right? If you're hiring a designer, then there's something to that. You really, really want this to be a beautiful space, specific space with all of the right things in place. So if we can do that in a way that doesn't have a negative impact on what the designer's vision is, then we'll do it. Whether it's let's match colors to any of the technology that we put in there. Let's make sure that if we know that we have this investment piece of art on the wall, let's make sure that we get the right lighting in place and in the right position as early as possible to make sure that that art looks the way that it was intended to look.
Amazing. So there's lots of thought process.
So much
that
thought
goes into it. And a lot of people might not think that either.
Yes, and I'm a people pleaser, so nothing hurts my feelings more than having to tell someone no because we're too far along in the process and we can't go back. And I don't want to cut the builder sheetrock, and I don't want to mess up timelines or anything like that. So if we can establish that relationship in the beginning, that also helps us establish the right budgets in place, then we can go from there.
Yeah, that's good. So you have 4 people that work here in Houston,
Yes.
right? And then it is a nationwide company.
Correct.
So let's talk about, because there's projects all over the place,
Yes.
right? And you even get leads from other places. So let's talk a little bit about the company some more there.
Yes, so Bravas was brought together. We are coast to coast, so we have offices from the Bay Area in California to Boca Raton in Florida and everywhere in between. So there's about 14 locations that came together about 5 years ago to create what Bravas is today. The cool thing about that is that we all still have our hometown small business feel, but we can work as a large team. And the way that works is that, yes, there's 4 home experience designers in Houston, but we have a team called HXD, and those are our kind of behind the scenes engineers, and they put all of our projects together. But how that works is that everyone has a specific place. So if we have someone here that's our technicians, speaking of them, if we have someone that's a lighting expert or a shading expert, and then we have someone else in another market, let's say, I don't know, Philadelphia or Kansas City, and they may not have the experience that our technicians do in that space, we can send them up there to work on the projects with them. So it creates this one team where even though we're all in different places, we still all communicate with each other.
Yeah, crisscrossing of locations.
Absolutely.
So there's also, learning for other people that are over there too.
Yes.
That's great.
So we have a lot of shared resources, which is really, really cool. I mean, and in Houston, we are very unique in that aspect, is that we have a lot of that. So we are able to send everywhere. We've got projects in Wyoming. We have projects in New York. So it's really cool. So even if we don't have an office there, we can send people to any location.
Yeah. In Minnesota, right?
In Minnesota.
Just somebody else.
Yes.
Was from our neck of the woods.
Yes, which was amazing. So again, I typically expect to have to call someone twice because of my area code, because I've had the same area code for the last 20 plus years, and I'm clearly not changing it. And yeah, so I had an opportunity in Minnesota, and she called, and she said she returned my call because she noticed that I had her old area code. And so I was like, see, this is great.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's, we have opportunities all over and nationwide, but also, worldwide if it calls for it. I have a designer that I am partnering with down in Cabo.
Oh.
So
maybe you could take a trip down there too.
I hope so. That is the plan.
So let's talk about some of the new products. If
Yes.
there's any new products that you want to talk about to tell people about that they could, incorporate into their home if they're looking to do some of this integration.
Yeah, so I think where it's all going, kind of how we talked about before, this industry as we've known it has been very like AV heavy, again, the speakers, the TVs and that. But things are shifting a little bit as people are starting to see the importance in shading and lighting. So you have a lot of sophisticated lighting where we can program scenes and play into the wellness factor of things. COVID changed things quite a bit. A lot more people are working from home and homeschooling and that, right? So you're spending a lot of time inside the same 4 walls, but you want to change what that feels like. So we have certain products, Ketra, made by Lutron, and that allows very, very specific lighting where each bulb has its own programming. So as I mentioned before, whether it's a piece of art that needs to have a specific temperature, a specific intensity, then we can program that one. Or if it's wellness is a big thing for me. We weren't meant to wake up to jarring alarms, and there's no worse feeling than waking up and having that ick with loud noises.
That's why I have my vibration on my watch.
Yes.
I can't sleep without that because that is one of those things I can't stand that.
Right.
Now, my 15-year-old son could sleep through 20 of those alarms, and I go upstairs and he's still sleeping. I'm like, how in the world does this kid sleep?
Right. So imagine if you had the perfect combination of, a blackout shade that automatically goes out at your wake time, and then your lighting is programmed to automatically, gradually brighten.
Kind of like a sunrise,
Kind of exactly like a sunrise. It mimics the sunrise, the way that we were supposed to go about our day, and then the same thing as the sun sets. it can automatically dim to where your body reacts and feels like, oh, okay, it's time to wind down. It's time to change what I'm doing. And then you provide that real experience. So that's probably my favorite thing, and the thing that I think that people need to pay very, very close attention to. Now, to go back to what you said earlier about, oh, I can go to this company and get this, or I can buy this at my favorite two-day shipper, and I can plug this in myself and do it. Yes, that's all true. But the sophistication of how it really works, or what if those things don't work anymore, and you're the one that has to figure out how to make it happen.
Yeah, and then having the backup of a company that can help.
Absolutely, and that's my favorite thing is the service aspect of it. We offer service plans so that you can give us a call or a text or an email at any time, and you will talk to a real person. So if something does go awry, there's, because you have to look at both sides of it, right? The good, the bad, and the ugly. So you're having people over on a Friday night and something doesn't work, pick up the phone, and if we can get in there remotely, we will. And then we will fix it for you if we can, and if we can't, at least you know where you stand with it.
Yeah.
But if you do that yourself, then you're gonna have to spend, you don't get to entertain anymore.
Yeah.
You spend time in your...
You have to have no entertainment or worry about, oh my gosh, how do I have to fix this?
Exactly. Just because you can do it yourself doesn't mean you should do it yourself.
Right.
And I personally am not the person that should do it myself. So I really enjoy having a team that can kind of handle that for me.
That's really good.
Yeah.
Okay, so then how do you handle the client experience, and how important is that to you when working with somebody?
That is extremely important. So to me, the experience begins the second that the phone is picked up on either end. So whether it's me calling the client or even the builder, designer, architect, or them calling me, the experience starts then. It's the whole first impression thing, right? But the most important thing to do is to listen to them. Like I said, I don't lead with product. I want to understand who's living in the house, how is the home being used, and then I kind of use the puzzle pieces to figure out what that looks like. A big misconception about what we do is the technology, right? People get a little bit scared of the technology part of it, or using apps to control things, but we can, and the voice control, right? Voice control is a big, big one.
Yeah.
We can do all of these things with or without voice control. There's really cool products in place like Josh AI, which is a little bit different than our two-day shipper friend, way more secure.
Yeah, a lot of people are scared of that.
They are, and rightfully so. But we do have solutions for that, for those that do want that voice control side of it. But we don't have to do it either. We can still put everything into one app. You can still have as much or as little. So when I'm meeting with somebody, I want to know what they want, not what I want them to have. I want to know how they want to experience their home. So I like to talk about what are their interests, what are their kids doing, or especially my older clients, right? They're the ones that really, really aren't as receptive to the idea of having all of these bells and whistles, but I can find a way to make it comfortable for them. Perfect example is I have this sweet, sweet client, met her about a year ago, and her sons are longtime clients of ours as well. And her TV wouldn't turn on. And people tried to help her, and they were trying to oversell her. Nobody wants to be sold to, right? So a lot of people were trying to oversell her, try to force her to get a lot of things she didn't really need. And when I got there, I realized she just needed a new remote. She just needed a new remote. Now, she's older, but she has a speaker system throughout the home. She uses it to listen to her podcasts every day and her audiobooks. She did not want shades, as many windows as she has. She did not want shades because she liked to get up. It made her physically get up and pull the shades down, right? So I heard all of those things. I heard her stories about raising her children, and now she lives alone in her condo, and all she needed was a remote. So we did that. And I treated that project like any other project that I've ever had.
Yeah.
So, and she was so happy with it, and happy that I was able to find a solution for her that didn't involve too many things. So whether it's that or whether it's the client that wants every single thing to have a button, then that's what I care about. I care about the stories that they tell me. I take it personally, and I want to get personal with them, and I like to feel like I'm part of their story.
Okay. Oh. He's trying to signal me over there too, so she'll stop moving around.
Right. For a little tap tap.
All right, so in closing here, I always ask the horror or funny stories. So I'm going to have you share with the audience for entertainment value what you would like to share that may have been something funny.
Yes.
That people
So
would enjoy.
I had a client, and this is not a horror story by any means, but again, like I said, I like to get a little personal with them. But the thing about it was that he would, I would get out of that house in any visit, in any consultation, in no less than an hour and a half because he wanted to chat the whole time. I am quite chatty, so I love that. And again, it makes it comfortable for them and makes them feel like I'm the right person for their project. So he had purchased a home that was full of technology already. He didn't realize that all of that stuff was in there, and he did not like any of it. He didn't want a button, he didn't want a rack, none of it. So for me, I was like, oh no, well, everything that he had required. There was no way to take it all out and kind of start fresh. So I just sat with him. I sat with him for as long as he wanted to chit chat. Again, an older gentleman. I sat with him as long as he wanted to chit chat, and I just explained to him, listen, I understand that you do not like the technology. You do not like all the bells and whistles. But what if I can make it comfortable for you so that it's here, you can't get away from it, but let's reprogram it, right? So my team came in, we reprogrammed the whole system. We upgraded some of it because it needed it. And he didn't question it. He didn't question it at all. And I got to know his family and his daughter and I are still friends to this day. But I think that the beauty of that was that when I walked in, he said, I don't want any of it, which happens a lot, right? Like I walk into some situations and they're just like, I don't want any of it. But when they realize that there's more to it than just, let's throw a bunch of stuff on walls and in the house.
Or maybe to simplify it for him a little bit, because sometimes, you know, it's harder for them to understand how things work, and yeah, they don't want all of that happening.
And another funny story is, I will say that there are not a lot of women in this portion of the industry, and I kind of thrive off of walking into situations where somebody says, you don't have a technician with you? And I get to say, I don't need one.
I think we talked about that when we had lunch the last time. I'm 100% right there with you, because of course in my industry, you know, it's unexpected too. People expect, oh, well, where's your, you know, partner or your husband? You know, he's running the show. I'm like, no.
Yes, and I have to say that I love seeing more women builders in the industry as well. And in the home experience design space, there's more of us, and I'm loving to see it. I have experienced a lot where it's time for the consultation and there's a married couple and the husband comes in and he says, my wife doesn't want to have anything to do with this. And I always say, are you sure? Are you sure? So then we always end up getting to some sort of design question, and he has to call her, and I reassure her, I have your back. I'm thinking with both sides of my brain, and I will be happy to make sure that this looks nice.
Yeah.
But again, that's where that designer, architect, builder relationship comes into play.
Yep.
Regardless of gender, man or woman. I am always going to partner with the people who are actually building the home, because that's where all of those pieces come together. But it is kind of funny whenever.
Yeah, because there is technical things to it, of course, and then there's also, like you said, the pretty.
Yes.
Make sure it looks good, and it makes the rest of the home look good with whatever the homeowner has pretty inside, right?
And when the wife is present, same thing. She'll come in and she'll say, oh, this is his thing. I'm going to leave that to him. And I'm like, and then the next thing you know, she and I are having the direct conversations, because she understands now that there's a lot of the design aspect. And then I get redirected to their designer to make sure that we're aligning. If I haven't already met them, then I make sure that, all those things align. And my husband, perfect example, a lot of our friends will call him and say, hey, what do you know about this technology or this thing for my house? And he always says, do not call me. Call Krystal. I know nothing about this stuff.
That's funny.
Yeah, and I love it.
Yeah, that is so funny. Well, this was such a pleasure. Thank you so much for sitting with me, and it was nice getting to know you more and getting to know more about Bravas.
Yes, thank you.
And so, yeah, stay tuned for the next one. Thank you.
Thanks.